Hey y'all, welcome back to Red at the Wire. Today we're going to be looking at the late pick four for Thursday's card at Belmont. So let's take a look at the sequence. The first leg in the late pick four is the sixth race at Belmont, and it's 1 mile on the dirt, and it's an optional claimer for $50,000 N1X for 3-year-olds and up. And as we know at Belmont, the 1 mile races are one turn. Number one is Fireline. Didn't do much in his first effort, but in her second effort, won going away. So kind of an interesting race pattern there. Has been given a bit of time off, and really the thing is a little bit of a concern is that she really didn't beat a whole lot in that November 4th effort. Guns and Graces is the only one to come back and beat and win their maiden. And in this field, that last race, the buyer would be a little light, but is debuting at 3 after a layoff, and we know Chad Brown is good with layoffs. So I think this one's a deserving favorite, and you pretty much have to use given the connections. Lay the Groundwork is one that was pretty decent in the last race, although it was only 4 horses, kept at it all the way around, and has been in and around this level for a while, and hasn't been too hot the last couple, but I think could factor. Mark Hennig's a pretty good trainer. You got Manny Franco aboard. It's a little bit, I don't want to say it's a downgrade from Merab Ortiz, but Manny Franco's a pretty good New York jockey. So make of that what you will. This one could factor. I mean, it's all a question of preference with this one. I don't know that I think the cutback into a mile is probably what the doctor ordered for this one. But the dirt form isn't the greatest. There's only one start. It's mostly turf and synthetic. So I would use advisedly if you were going to choose to use this one. Tough Street's very logical in this spot. Real solid fit within the class. The mile you see has run the last 5 at that distance, so it's clearly preferred. Hasn't been out of the money in quite some time, and I only see one effort coming off the bench on turf where she did. So you'd have to say this one's a really logical contender. It's a solid fit. Another Chad Brown, so no reason not to use. Amity Island, on the other hand, seems a little outclassed in this race. You can see her 3 efforts against Statebreds at the N2X level weren't very impressive. And just buyer-wise, she's really light, and I think this would be a big step up for her. So I will look elsewhere because there's other pretty salty field. Toned Up is a late runner and may have some pace to run to in this race. He's cutting back to a mile and from turf to dirt. The dirt form seems to be about. I don't know if this one has an advantage, dirt over turf, but seems pretty good in either. Likes to come from off the pace. Has been in the class for a while. That's the only thing that kind of bothers me. Has been at the N2X level for a while, and they're moving up the claiming price, and but so technically this is stepping up in class and really isn't factoring. I would say this one's more an underneath type of play, and so for being a closer, there may be some pace to run to. So that would be this one's best bet. With this vow is kind of interesting. Turned by Richard Dutrow, who's now back after a 10-year suspension, and he's been doing really well so far. He won his first, and he got a second in his second, so he's firing on all cylinders, and he's taking his time. This one's competitive, I think, at this class level. That last race kind of is a bit of a concern because she kind of got blown away within the class, and it was at one turn, albeit at 7 furlongs. Was primarily running on the West Coast, and now you're moving east. And again, sometimes the East is a little bit tougher nut to crack. So this one, I mean, I think there's some things to like, and I would just I think it's just a matter of your preference, really. I think 7-2 though is a little low. Excuse me. Vienna Code really doesn't appear to be good enough. just hasn't factored within the class, and is an N1X, has been in that for quite some time, and is now moving up to N2X without graduating. So kind of hard to like in this spot. Would have to run her absolute best, and is coming second off the layoff, and but I think others appeal a lot more, so I wouldn't bother with this one. The second leg of the late pick four is the seventh race at Belmont. It's an optional claimer of 80,000 N3X for 4-year-olds and up, and it's running the dirt at 7 furlongs. Number one is Synthesis, and trained by David Jacobson, who's doing pretty well at the meet so far. 2 for his first 5, and the other, so he's 8, and he's 4 out of 5 in the money. So the barn's at a pretty good clip here. The last race this one had was in the King Leatherberry at Laurel, and had a lot of trouble, but looked willing to run to me, and was so I think second off the layoff. I think probably this one will be doing better than expected, and I think 10-1 you're actually getting a fairly good price. This is a fairly deep allowance race, but this one has some appeal, particularly at 10-1. So one maybe you want to think about. Tops the chart is had the debut at 4 years old. And the thing that was intriguing to me was this one had his career high buyer. So you always like to see that. It bodes pretty well for the year if they're starting off at their high. And you can see finished off with his high in December at 3 years old. This is, the last effort was pretty good, and it was a key race as a stage left came back and ran in the stakes race over the weekend. So I think this one's a pretty good fit. It's going to be on the edge. It should be up near the lead, and that'll be a pretty good place to be. So you are getting an extra panel here, so it makes it a little more challenging. But this one has a lot of route experience, and I think is a pretty good fit here. You get Manny Franco as well, so this is one I think that you can consider using. 8-1 I think is a pretty good price too. 3-2 zone is up for the 80,000 tag. That would normally raise a big red flag for me, but you've got Ray Handel is doing really well at this Belmont meet, and he's been dropping his horses really well, placing them. Now, this one is coming off a fairly decent layoff, and not a couple month layoff. Ray Handel is 44%, 72% in the money with a 397 ROI with a 31-60 layoff at Belmont. Enough said. This one has the back class, ran in the 4-go. You see, he has a lot of stakes efforts. It is a little troubling, admittedly, that this one's up for the tag, but you can also see it's a first-time gelding too. So I would venture to guess that this one will be in good form, and at 8-1, I think you're getting a good price. I think this is one you can definitely consider using, especially given the trainer angle advantage. Following C is a Todd Pletcher special. This one is coming off a 2-year, almost a year and a half layoff, let's call it. And if you look at the back class here, this one was a pretty solid horse. Ran in the Haskell, and the Jerkins didn't work out well in the Haskell, so they smartly moved this one back to 1 turn, and that's when the magic happened. This one won the Vosburg, finished 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and was 2nd in the Cigar Mile, all around 1 turn like we have today. The big issue, of course, is the layoff, but Todd Pletcher is 23% with a 365 to 500 day layoff. So I'm going to venture to guess this one's going to come back in pretty good order. 2 for 2 at Belmont, so easily the class of the field. And you look at the work tab, it looks pretty solid, and you see a bullet in the last work. You reunite, Pletcher's reuniting with Johnny V. Nice to see. So I think that it's logical that this one you definitely could use. And if you're feeling gutsy, you could single. But I will say this is a fairly competitive race. So if the following seed doesn't come back at full strength, then you maybe want to be a little defensive. Number 5 is Chestertown. trained by Steve Asmussen, and this is a $2 million horse who just really hasn't fired. Bottom line, you can see this one's been stuck at the N3X level, just like he was stuck at the N2X level for quite a few starts. And they've sprinkled in a couple of ungraded stakes for state breds, and he's been okay in those. So I think this horse is kind of in a holding pattern. At 6 years old, seems to take a long time to move forward. And I think in this case, particularly when I have the 4 in this race, this one's really up against it, and I'm not liking this one at all. Gun It is a Linda Rice, and this one is first off the claim, where she is 26%. She's pretty good. And this one is it has shown some flashes. It's been fairly competitive, but you can see has been in the N3X class a fair amount of time. They even stopped protecting this one and dropped into the open claiming ranks. So Linda Rice was right there to swipe up. Jose Ortiz aboard is a really good sign. The two of them hooking up are at 36%. So that's a potent combination. The only thing is you'll see Linda Rice is 5% first off the claim at Belmont, and she owns this horse too, and hasn't won in a couple of years. So there's a lot of seconds too. So you're kind of thinking maybe this one tends towards seconditis. I would consider this one more for underneath, particularly when you consider the other ones more prominent in this race. It's hard to make this one a win candidate when you see that many seconds. So in sum, I could certainly see singling following seed number 4, but you do have to wonder about that year and a half layoff, and you could spread a little bit. There are a couple here that are also worthy win candidates, and you're going to get some decent pricing. The third leg of the late pick 4 is the 8th at Belmont. It's an optional claimer for $62,000, N2X, non-winners at 3 lifetime, and it's for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's to be run on the turf at 7 furlongs. And this is a pretty contentious race. There's a lot of different ways to go here. Number 1 is Mrs. Green, trained by Mark Cassey, took over for Linda Rice, so it must have been a private purchase of some kind. At 3 years old, was doing okay, was making headway, and had got to the N2X level and nearly graduated from that. You can see a fairly steady string of buyer improvement. The one thing I was a little concerned about when you look at this one is you do have 3 out of the 4 last races where she was the chalk in each and only came through in one of them. So that's a little bit of an issue. However, though, she came in at 9-2 and raced 2 back and won. So sometimes we nitpick, but I think this one is. I think this one's a logical fit. I expected a 4-year-old debut will move forward, and that would likely be a winning effort. So I think this one's a logical fit. Miss Carol Ann is right in Graham Motion's wheelhouse. This one is coming off a long layoff, and he is 40% and 60% in the money with, get this, a $7.80 ROI. That's with long layoffs. Enough said. This was a definite use. You see that last race in the Pebbles running against Faith in Humanity and Gina Romantica. Faith in Humanity came back later to win that stakes race. It escapes me, but I believe it was down at Tampa, but in a pretty impressive fashion. So that was a pretty good field, and she did okay to finish 2.5 lengths back. So you get Johnny V aboard, and I would say this one is a definite use as well. Mischievous Dream as a Todd Pletcher trainee. This one, it seems like a bit of a project for him, or one that's soon to go to the claiming box, because if you look, this one doesn't really seem to be improving and has been stuck at the N2X level for quite some time. They put this one in, tried some stakes, the Honey Rider and the Chelsea Flower, but neither one really didn't light things up for this one. So it just seems like this one is sort of plateaued. And granted, it's going to be debuting after a long layoff and was previously trained by Christophe Clement. So yet we have another likely private purchase. I think this one is pretty much hit the plateau, and you never want to see that. And debuting at 5, you can't expect much of a move forward from there. So I'm going to pass on this one. In my opinion, is another one that's this one has been on dirt mostly, and the thing that's kind of interesting to me is this one seemed to be doing pretty well at parks and on dirt, and looked like it was doing okay and finding a niche, and yet they sent to Belmont and they moved to turf. The last 2 turf efforts were okay, but they weren't anything to write home about. And I think this one's really up against it class-wise, so I'm going to look elsewhere. Breeze Easy is a good hard knocker for Christophe Clement. Another one debuting at 4, and at 3, this one did pretty well. You see a couple of ungraded stakes, some placings, and they were running that same Pebbles race and didn't do too much. And it became right back at the N1X level and just missed out to Mrs. Green, and that was actually a really nice race. And it was too bad she got nailed. Did a nice effort. But the good news is, went to synthetic and Woodbine, came right back to win. So I think there's some quality here. And again, debuting at 4 for a good outfit, Christophe Clement and Joel Rosario, who's great at turf sprints. You couldn't ask for a better pilot. This is an obvious use and a logical candidate to win. Bohemian Club is Chad Brown and Flavian Pratt. Need you say more at Belmont. But this one, granted, is certainly a fit, but takes a little while to get going. And now you're going from 2-turn efforts for all of this, the totality of this horse's career, and now you're cutting back to 7 furlongs. And that's kind of a big sticking point for me. Chad Brown's great off long layoffs. I'm sure this horse is going to run a nice race. But I'm not sure that a sprint is exactly what the doctor ordered for this one. It seems to me like they're trying to shake up. So I'm 5-2 might be a bit of an underlay. I think you have to use, given the connections. But I'm a little skittish about this one running in a sprint. Wonka is, Belmont, Junior Alvarado, great connections, but the thing about this one is it's another one that's been stuck in the class for quite some time and can't seem to find a fit for her. She just, you see the buyers are light compared to the better ones in here, and has been running not the N2X level of the optional claimer, more just the standard. So, and you see the one time they stepped up to the N2X class, it was moderately successful. I think this one's a little over her head. And it's to me, and I don't. It is route to sprint for turf isn't the greatest angle. It's 9% for Belmont, so I'll pass on this one. Maybe the next time. Regal Realm for Jonathan Thomas. His barn is due to explode. He was cold at Keeneland. They're just too good, and this is a good place for him. Being at Belmont with a 61 to 180 layoff. He's great at turf sprints, and he's great at long layoffs with turf sprints. So, I think this is a good place. The last effort was a career high. It wasn't the option 25 N1X level. And the thing that was a bit of a concern to me is that she got off to glacial fractions. You see 24 and 48 for 7.5 furlongs. Wasn't challenged at all. And it wasn't the greatest field. Diamond Hands was the favorite, and that's a Pletcher, a trainee who's been around for a long time and has been a big-time underachiever. So it wasn't the greatest of field. But the thing is, this one won with authority and drew off and looked like it had plenty of run. Now, are you going to get those type of soft fractions this time? Likely not. But this one will be on the front end and could have the chance to steal it. And with the layoff is going to be fresh, and if it takes another move forward, can build off that career high, then you've got something. So, excuse me. I think 4-1 is a little is a bit of an underlay, but I think this one has to be used, given the connections and given the fact that I think improvement is likely. Sail By is kind of intriguing. This one showed a lot of promise at 2. Won the Miss Grillo, a Breeders' Cup prep, and competed at the ungraded stakes level for the majority of her 2-year-old campaign. Ran in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Didn't go so well. But, one thing you can say is that this one debuted at 3 and came right back and ran a pretty good effort in a key race in the Memories of Silver. Since then has been just sort of was looking to head, excuse me, in the right direction. And then the Lake Placid and the Pebbles really didn't factor very well. And so they switched over to dirt, and that didn't really got a second, but I can't believe that lit their pants on fire seeing that. So the move back to turf with a long layoff it seems logical. And this is the 4-year-old debut for a horse who has shown some ability on turf. So at 12-1 is a pretty good price, and might steal one because there's a lot of horses coming off long layoffs, and regardless of whether the trainer's good or bad at it, I mean sometimes horses need one. So I think you throw this one in at a really nice price. You do have main track onlys for this race as well. And every indication to me is that they will run this on the turf, but I think they're logical uses. Both of them, you can see their dirt form is pretty good, and I think they both class fit. So you consider, you certainly have to rework your ticket if this one comes off the turf, and I think they're logical uses if that's the case. Let's look at the pick 4. It's the 9th at Belmont, and it's a maiden claimer for $40,000 for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares, and it's run at the inner turf at 6 furlongs. Number 1 is My Cara Mia Mine. 0 for 12 lifetime. That's enough for me. Hasn't come anywhere close to a victorious effort, and we're going on 3 years now without a diploma. That's enough for me. I pass. Paul Silicon, on the other hand, ran a really good third last time. Maddie's Grace and Spooky Lady basically dueled it out down the stretch, so everybody else was playing for third. But Paul Silicon showed a lot of showed some big improvement, and the main thing is she seemed to have a lot left in the tank coming down the stretch. Granted, it wasn't good enough, but I think she's a logical contender to have another move in her. And Jimmy Bond, good trainer in New York, and so I think this one's a logical win candidate. Giggling Ghost, another one, 0 for 11, hasn't won in 2 years and going on 3. Don't see anything here to tell me that this one's going to all of a sudden discover how to win a race. The route to sprint maybe is going to help a little bit, but the bottom line is this horse doesn't understand what she's supposed to be doing out there, so that's a pass for me. Dance With Me Babe is Michelle Nevin is red hot. You can see she's 5 for 7 in the money and 3 for 7 winning at 43%. So anything she puts out there, of course, you have to take seriously. The one thing I'll note is that you can see that they tried this one at the maiden in a turf sprint and didn't do very well. So logically, they dropped her in class, and she ran in that same great race with Paul Silicon and really didn't factor very well at all. And now the only thing I'll say is that maybe this one needed one. Michelle Nevin's a little better with second off the layoff as opposed to coming off a layoff, and it is a second race at 3, and she did pair her career high, her only race rather, from 2 years old. So there's a couple of things to think about, but really, if you're going to use this one, it has to be based on the barn being so hot, and I think that would probably make the case for me more than anything else. Queens over 3s is been running on dirt, so that's the first thing is, why the sudden move to turf? Well, she hasn't won, and she's been at the state bred level for all of her tries. They dropped her to the maiden 40, and she ran a pretty good race. And then they dropped her again to the maiden 40 against Older, and she ran a pretty good race. So maybe this is the place where she runs. This is a good class fit for her. The numbers are, great. Again, they're on dirt, so we don't really know. Bustin' Stones is an okay first-time turf sire. And Rudy Rodriguez is 11% with the layoff. So, okay. Nothing great, but might be a pace presence, and you do get the bug. I'd leave it up to you on this one. I could go either way, to be honest. It's a fairly wide open field. Number 6 is Gotham Gray, trained by Christophe Clement. Seems to be getting his sea legs. Was a little cold over at Churchill and Keeneland, and he's got Flevier and Pratt aboard. Christophe Clement is great at turf sprints, and this one has not run on a sprint yet, is cutting back. He's 25%, 61% in the money route to sprint. So this looks exactly like what the doctor ordered, particularly if you consider that race on April 14th. Gotham Gray had a lot of pluck early on, and really it looks she stayed in it a little longer than it actually looks. But obviously the distance was a little much to be running in that style. So voila, turf sprint. I think she's a good fit at 8-1. You get a nice price, definite use. Mary Catherine is the last race. She was unfortunate in that the horse to her inside blew the turn completely and carried her way, way, way out wide. She was like 11 out wide to the point off the screen. That's how long it was. So we can forgive that effort. However, she really didn't rebound for it. And that's kind of what I was looking for when I watched the replay. I was like, let's see how she deals with it. Does she still try to make a race out of it? And really didn't. So hard to read what to do with this one exactly, because it really didn't get a frame of reference because of that riding mishap. But she's at 10-1. She's by Constitution, who's okay on the turf. Nothing great, no great shakes. So Natalia Lynch, I really don't know a whole lot about. So she's a bit of a mystery, and I just leave it up to you. Probably I wouldn't use. I'll wait to see how she does in this race. Dreaming of Carly, Linda Rice is not good with first-time starters. She likes to have them to get a race under their belt. I mean, she's okay, 15%, but it's not her forte. Let's put it that way. She's 0 for 4 with Jose Ortiz, and 8% otherwise as far as first turfers. So, this one could be any kind. Always Dreaming is not a good first-time starter sire at all. He's notorious for being notoriously bad. So, despite the fact that it's Linda Rice and there's Jose Ortiz, they're a pretty good combination together. But I don't see much else. So, if you want to take a stab, I'd say go for it. But to me, it's a little on the iffy side, just given those stats. Gracefulness is trained by David Donk, and I think he's been a little under the radar this meet, but this one I looked at a multitude of different ways trying to figure out if this one had anything to like, and I really didn't see much, particularly that last race. You could see, while it was on the dirt, she didn't show much fight at all. The one turf effort was at 2 turns, and she really didn't do much running in that one either. So it's hard to like much out of this horse, and I'll look elsewhere. Purest Performance is by Oscar Performance. He is a great first-time starter turf sire, 21%. Aside from that, there isn't much on the dam side, and the work tab doesn't really tell me that this one is a speedball or has a lot of precocity. You can see that in turf sprints, John Pregman is 7%. So there isn't a whole lot to like with this one, except the fact that that's a great first-time sire. So at 15-1, probably worth it to just throw on the ticket, because then if it does come in, you get paid. Ms. Me is by Flintshire. Flintshire is 5% with firsters, and he's 5% with turf sprints. He gets routers. That's what they want to do. Joe Sharp, nice trainer, but he isn't the greatest with first-time starters either. He's okay. Look to the dam to try to find something to get excited about, and the dam is 0 for 1 with firsters. So if we look at the tab, we see it's been consistent. You can say that for the most part, But when I see only 6 works for a first-time starter, that tells me that maybe there's still some work to be done. And I venture to guess, especially as a May 3-year-old, that might be the case here. So I'm going to pass. April 1st is another one by David Donk. And again, I couldn't really find anything to get excited about, save for the fact that this is second off the layoff in the second race at 3 years old. You will note that on turf at the sprint, this one ran her career high to debut at 3, which is always a pretty good sign. However, it was in that race with Parceliquin, and she was up the track while Parceliquin, I thought, gave a much better effort. Now, if you want to go on the theory that you should include every horse that was in that last race, particularly if you like one who was in the money, then maybe this is one you think about. But I can't see much to get excited about, except for the fact this is the second turf race, and perhaps there might be some improvement. But I don't consider this one to be a real solid win candidate. You do have also eligible here, and you've got main track only. This also eligible by Patrick Reynolds. I didn't see much to like about, except for the name, Strange Fruit. Must be a Billie Holiday fan. Great name. The cutback is definitely a help. This one was around 2 turns last time, but really didn't factor very much. So at 20-1, if you like her, maybe you give her a shot. Teufelsberg was more of a sprinter as a horse. And I wouldn't be surprised if that would be more preferable for this one. So something to think about with Strange Fruit. Main track only, again, I think this one will probably be run on turf. However, I think Bruce Levine on dirt with a sprinter in a maiden claimer, I think is really logical, and I would definitely push the button if this one goes main track only. So here's what our ticket looks like for the late pick 4. There's a couple of contentious races on the bottom, so we're going to try to go a little light on the top. In the 6th, we're going to use 1, 3, 6. In the 7th, we're going to single the 4 following C, and we're just going to pray because we're going to need some to spread in the last 2 races. In the 8th, we're going to use 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9. And in the 9th, we're going to use 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If the 13 draws, then I would use as well. So 3 times 6 is 18, times 5 is 90, so that's a $45 ticket at a 50-cent base. So I think that gives us a decent shot at what may potentially be a fairly chalky race with the first 2. So we want to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck. Going to try to go short early so we can go long late. Those last 2 races are pretty wide open, so we want to have a lot of options. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and that single, hopefully we can get through with that, and that'll give us a lot of options to take down the sequence. We will have part 4 of our Elements of Handicapping series, Pace, due very shortly, and I'll refer you back to the first 3 parts if you haven't seen them already, form, class, and speed, and I think they're pretty informative. You'll get a lot out of them when you're taking a look at who you want to use and who you want to toss for the Preakness. We'll also have our final assessment episode where we put them all together and decide a strategy and who we might want to use, who might not, and so that'll be coming up as well. We're also going to continue with our Belmont card series. Every day they have racing, we'll have a sequence for you, so you can look forward to that as well. Of course, if you do like what you see here, please like and subscribe, and we do thank you for coming by. And keep those comments coming, guys. I'd love to hear from you folks.